Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined tonight, of course, by Kevin Graham. It's the original Screamacelica crew. Kev, how are you on this Wednesday night? It's
Not too
Thursday.
bad. It's a Thursday night. It's usually a Wednesday that we do it, but it's a Thursday night tonight. And
My sound's coming through your speakers, I think, mate.
Is it?
I think so. Unless... No, we're good. We're good. It was me. I always try and blame you when the technical issues are on my side.
I mean, I've got my thank you for calling about your car insurance headset on. So it's not me.
I thought you were an auctioneer, Kev.
Trainee auctioneer.
Does he never get your badge?
No, I was made redundant because of the mad cow disease, the BSE crisis.
I remember it. We've been through quite a lot of crises. Is that what you call them? Is it crises?
I don't know.
When
does the cost of living crisis just become a crisis?
I know, but listen, apparently we've all just to take it on the chin. We're just going to be poorer, and that's it. And it's your own fault. And don't ask for a pay increase because that just adds to inflation. What a pile of nonsense that is. Kev, I've just got to say, anybody tuning in for the first time, Screamacelica was our baby for a long, long time. But because of life and everything else, we put it on the back burner for a while, always with the intention of bringing it back. You have done fully produced versions of this where you've spoken to people like Johnny Proctor, who's a Dundee United fan, Kevin Miles. We took it on a slightly different route for a while, but we decided that we were going to run through a few of our favourite bands' discographies, and we've started off with OASIS. We'll get on to Primal Scream. We'll do a bit of Blur. We'll do this, that, and the other. People can let us know in the comments what you want us to cover. But we're on this OASIS journey at the moment, aren't we?
Aye, definitely. It's really interesting. I think because as well, here at State of Mind with Alan McGee, we're going to have Tony McCarroll, we're going to have Brian Cannon for Microdot as well up at the Barras Art and Design in the next couple of weeks and that, eh? So it's really good to actually revisit this because, I mean, this album was 20 years ago. And even though it doesn't really seem like 20 years ago, it was 20 years ago. And it's interesting going back. And I'm going to be honest, in the last 2 days is the first time I've heard the 4 B-sides.
What was the other album that you said that? Was it Standing on a Shoulder of Giants?
I have not heard any B-sides probably since Be Here Now. Or if I've heard them, it's been somewhere else. It's just been... and even then, the one that I say is on Be Here Now, was it Flashbacks? I can never remember hearing that song. I've either blanked it out my mind or I had never heard it. So,
well, I'll say this straight off the bat. We'll come back at the end of the show to talk about the B-sides that should have been on the album and the album tracks that you would replace with a B-side, Kev. But if nothing else, you've heard a few cracking OASIS tunes that you probably weren't aware of then if you've been listening to the B-sides on this album.
Aye, definitely. And that was something, when you says that we were going to do this, I was like, well, that's good because that means I'll probably need to go and listen to the B-sides. But also, I think it probably shows where I was on my OASIS journey at this point, after Be Here Now. When you get to circus-fied OASIS, the two brothers and a load of session musicians, still a great live band, a brilliant live band, but you just think sometimes they were going through the motions with the albums, Sometimes you just get that impression, but I must admit I found a couple of gems far. Listen to the B-sides of it.
A couple of gems in one game. And the thing with this album, Kev, is that I probably listened to it differently for the first time because I've never listened to it to review it or revisit it with a view to having a discussion about it. So I've always kind of, in my mind, thought this LP was my second least favourite OASIS album. So the least favourite is Standing on the Shoulder. I think no, I wouldn't even say it was a flawed album. I think Be Here Now is a flawed album. Standing on the Shoulder of Giants is an EP. It should never have been an album. And this here, I just thought was a pretty poor album. But when I look at it in its entirety and I listen to all the B-sides and the way that it could have sounded, I've actually got a new angle on it. But that's simply because I'm listening to it differently. I'm not just listening to it as an OASIS fan who was a bit disappointed in the LP, thought it was patchy at the time. I'm listening to it when I do these shows and I'm thinking, right, how could it have been better? What B-side should have been on the album? How could this have been a much better album? And so I'm listening to it completely differently this time round.
I am listening to it completely differently as well, because at the time, you're still young enough and naive enough to want it to be a definitely maybe. And
You
at the
think,
time,
they're going to recreate that or somehow do?
they're going to somehow recreate that, somehow do that. And there's a couple of things on this album that I probably really loved at the time, but I was probably forcing it because I wanted it just to be good. And now when I'll go back 20 years later and go and listen to it, I'm like, nah, that's, I get where you're going with that, but it's not as good as what I thought it actually was. And also as well with this album, there was quite a few songs in this album I couldn't. When I looked at the 2 seconds, I'm getting hang with my wee boy. What's happening?
Wants to get involved in the show, mate.
He wants to get involved in the show.
Is that young Liam Noel Paul?
He looks like Lee Mavers rather than Liam.
Does he? Nice.
Aye.
Have you seen the recent photos of him that have popped up? Apparently
No.
he's working on new music. Have you not?
Working on new music since 1989, eh?
That's right. Yeah, probably the same jam. He's probably doing the same song, the same loop. But yeah, a few pictures have popped up recently on the socials, mate. You should check them out.
Aye.
Yeah.
I will check them out. Aye. But as I was saying before, I was rudely interrupted. There was a couple of songs in this. I couldn't tell you how they went. Even looking at them, going like that. Force of nature. I can't remember how that goes. Like, whereas with standing on the shoulders, I could remember how everything went. So I must have listened to that album far more than this one.
Do you think you checked it a wee bit by this stage?
Definitely.
OASIS-wise, right?
Aye, definitely. Aye.
I mean,
still wanted to see them live. But
exactly. You always did, though, didn't you?
Yeah,
you always did. I mean, also the whole basis of this show is we pick an LP. We talk about where the band was at that time, where we were as fans, and where Celtic were, of course. And this album came out. It's Oasis's 5th album. Obviously, you don't count the master plan in that run because that was a compilation. We'll come back to the live album that they released as well, but I think we'll probably do a show with the 2 live albums rather than just plod through them individually.
So that's the 5th live. That's the 5th album, and basically 8 year when you actually think about it.
Yeah,
94 to 2002.
That's prolific. That is prolific. And bearing in mind what we were speaking about when we did the master plan was that the master plan is songs that made that up. The collection of songs in the 90s should have provided Oasis and Noel Gallagher with 4 10 million plus selling albums. That was the whole discussion we had. And you and I then wrote down our track listing, our dream track listing, which got a wee bit of traction. So that you're right. I mean, it's a right prolific run, particularly with Noel Gallagher. But this is where I'm going to come in and say that there was a few things about this album looking back that I think were probably bad choices. So it's the 1st of July 2002. Celtic are embarking on a season, Kevin, that promised so much, but ultimately delivered nothing. Now, people might say, oh, wait a minute, you can't say that. We had Seville. That's right, but we never won. We never won anything this season. So we're going into the realms of that, which obviously that particular campaign is going to be celebrated this weekend with Alan Thompson and John Hartson, 2 events that we are running on a Celtic State of Mind. Looking very much forward to them. You're going to be part of the Friday night gig.
Night,
Are you keeping it under your hat, what you're actually going to do on Friday night? Are you going to keep that a secret?
I don't know. I've already threatened if it doesn't sell out, I'm going to do some poetry. And I've threatened that on social media.
And I noticed that the tickets started going like that. There's 11 left. There's 11 left. Now, I don't know what that says, Kev. I think that'd be a bit cruel. But I'll tell you what, you should get on the stage and do some poetry anyway. What about this then, right? Martin O'Neill, we go back, we think about the great times under Martin O'Neill, the big signings, that clutch of players that came in the first kind of wave, Kev, and then supplemented by the likes of Big John and everything in the second season. Going into this campaign, do you know who the two buys were? We've paid £1 million for
David
one of them.
Fernandez.
£1.5 million for Magnus Hedman.
Nice.
And we also bought Ulrich Larsson.
Obviously, because he came on in Seville, didn't he? Was I right with Fernandez at that point as well?
Fernandez came in as a replacement apparently for Lubo.
Right.
Didn't quite work out. So you do remember, obviously, you remember all the good times, you remember the big players, but then you think to yourself, that's a huge letdown. Now, is it
But
because
then
Martin O'Neill looked at the squad and thought we had enough?
Oyers would have says that Marcus Headman was an upgrade on Rob Douglas. And we can't airbrush that. We
And he was
cannot airbrush that.
He was probably one of the biggest earners when we signed him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Headman.
Aye.
No, fair play, fair play. By the way, I'm not going to say anything like that to Rob Douglas's face because he's got hands like the proverbial shovels. And if he gave you a backhander, I don't think you would recover from it, Kev, to be honest with you.
I think Rab's quite down to earth to admit himself, because he's been asked quite a few times who the Seville team would get into the Rodgers Invincible sides and even Ange Postecoglou's sides, and he always says that that whoever Craig Gordon would have got in. He always says
He's just being humble. He's being humble.
He always says that the goalie would have got in, or Fraser Foster was another one that he says would have got into the Seville side.
He's a good guy, Rab. I think we should maybe do a gig with him at Gracie's, to be fair. I'm going to ask you, Kev, before we get stuck into these tracks, what is for you the real distinction between 1990s Oasis and 2000s Oasis? Because they are they're very, very different bands. I don't just mean personnel. The sound, the artwork, the whole vibe, completely different, aren't they?
It is completely different. They've sort of went from a band to a brand. See,
yes,
I just came up with that there. I like that. Yep. It's something that it seemed that they wanted to continue, even though they maybe knew deep down that it wasn't really working. I think Noel maybe knew deep down it wasn't really working, but they were still selling at stadiums. There was still money to be made. They still probably had loans to Sony to pay off, and they still had like this and that. And by the time we get to this point, it's a bit like the Rolling Stones. When was the last time you listened to a new Rolling Stones album? Even though they've had one out probably once every 5 years for the last 50 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I always remember them saying we didn't want to be like the Rolling Stones. Well, in the space of 5 years in your career, you actually became the Rolling Stones.
So they start releasing albums to allow them to go on a tour.
Aye.
Basically. Because they know that the cash cow that Oasis became a touring band. They could tour the world. But in order to do that, you had to release something.
Aye.
And generally, Kev, I think that there's a few albums. I think the last one and this one, you've got half a dozen top-notch songs, but there's a lot of filler, and I think that's what the issue is. However, my new angle on it is, again, if there was a bit better management with the tunes, it would have been a better album. And I think a big part of that is Noel allowing the collaboration, because obviously in the last album, the tour of that album, you noticed that Game and Andy Bell had joined the band, Gwigsy and Bonehead had left, but they weren't on the LP. This time round, during the songwriting process and the recording process, Game and Andy Bell are part of the band, but they're part of that songwriting process as well. And some of their songs end up on the LP. So if you think about it, I get that, right? Because you had a situation for a long time where, Teenage Fan Club, you had 4 songwriters in the band at one time.
Aye.
Where all they had to do was come up with 3 songs each and you've got a cracking album. So I get that. But I don't think it worked. I really don't. And conversely, some of my favourite songs on the album aren't actually Noel Gallagher songs, right? So I maybe contradicts myself a wee bit. But I think that was a massive change in direction that, for me, completely changed the sound of an Oasis album.
Aye, it does. But then when you listen to the B-sides again, you go, why did Noel just put his foot down and go, by the way, there's still... And I maybe understand that there's maybe a bit of imposter syndrome there, because Game and Andy Bell are decent musicians. And he probably thought to say, well, I might benefit with working with these guys and letting them bring in the ideas. But the problem was with they guys was either decent songwriters in their own right, but they try to write too much like Oasis, Diet Oasis, if you get what I mean. They just tried to write in a certain style rather than going, right, we'll go sort of 60s pop psychedelic, or we'll go, or I'll write you something that I really feel like writing. They just they kept a sort of blueprint that, truthfully, that Liam's solo songwriters have done far, far better in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Aye. Write me 10 songs that sounds like my brother wrote them. And Liam's songwriters have done it far, far better than what Game and Andy Bell ever done.
Yep. And I think also there is some real quality in the B-sides. We'll get to that. But Noel has since admitted that he got to the point where he was writing a song or songs that he felt had to be kind of stadium anthems or stadium rock songs. And I think that comes across because it is almost like painting by numbers, Kev, where they lose a wee bit of that passion. And there's a few examples there, and we'll get to them very, very soon. But I'm interested to hear what everybody else thinks, because obviously Screamacelica isn't a new show, but it has been relaunched. And we're doing all the Oasis albums in the run-up to our big gig next month. 30 years of Oasis, because it's been 30 years next month since they were discovered, in inverted commas, because Kev's not a full believer on that one. It's King Tut's Wawa Hut by Alan McGee. Plunge McNugget. Just listen to a new band, Scottish, I think, The Rain Experiment. Brilliant, guys. Have you heard of them, Kev?
Nope.
I'll check them out. Thanks for that. I like a recommendation. I normally get them from JP Mason, but he's had a wee break over the last few weeks. He will be coming back. Scott Howe. Wasn't a good album, was it? Well, that's what we're here to discuss, Scott. Because in the back of I'm a massive Oasis fan, in case you hadn't noticed. I mean, look at the Axom logo. We ripped off Brian Cannon. And I remember saying to Brian Cannon of Microdot, who's going to be appearing at our gig next month, that we've kind of ripped your logo off. He says it's fine because I ripped off Decca. So that's absolutely no problem at all. And that's what happens. You just pilfer here and there, wee good ideas, and hopefully turn them into your own. Burger Boy, I get up when I'm down. I can't swim, but my soul won't drown. Is it the best lyric? Is it the worst lyric? I think it's pretty good. And you're commenting on Twitch. Thanks for that, Burger Boy.
Wow.
Mike, I know. We don't often see that, do we?
No,
Michael McDonald. Keep commenting on Twitch, Burger Boy. We like seeing that.
Aye, definitely, aye.
No, getting lazy by this point. Right. That's another way to look at it. Again, I read all the interviews. I've got a stack of archive magazines and all the rest of it. And he was talking about the songs drying up a bit, Kev. Again, were they? When you look at the B-sides, I'm not sure. But he felt really for the first time on Standing on the Shoulders of Giants that he couldn't come up with 20 songs for an album anymore. So a bit of laziness, maybe a bit of that lethargy, or you just don't have the songs. They're just no racking up like they used to.
I think he's maybe no been. If he was allowing himself to be lazy and let it flow, you wouldn't release 5 albums in 8 years.
Plus the one
he's
that could
pushing
have
it. He's pushing it at this point, and that's why it's probably no coming.
So it's quantity over quality, yeah.
Aye. He is pushing it at that point, and sometimes you just need to go, well, I'll fall out the sky eventually.
Yeah.
And just get on with it.
I love my cover art. Obviously, Kev's got Screamacelica behind you. I always got to call it Screamacelica. You know that Alan McGee wanted that red, white, and blue, right?
Aye. Well,
and
Bobby Gillespie. Bobby doesn't say that in his book right enough, but that's... Bobby says he chose the colours, but he didn't say that Al McGee wanted it red, white, and blue. He doesn't mention McGee when they're talking about the cover.
Is that right? Paul Cannell was the artist. He unfortunately died very young. And Michael talks about the cover, influenced by Rubber Soul. I don't like the cover, mate. I really don't like the cover. Not simply because it's not a microdot. It's just it's like a cover that you would get in one of these secondhand shops that used to sell the old bootlegs. Let's find an Oasis picture, get the old logo, get the new logo, try and merge it. It just looks rubbish. I don't like the cover. That's one thing that I definitely won't change my mind on.
No. By the time you get to this point, when you're post microdot, I think all the covers are rubbish. And I think
I quite like the last one. Dig out your soul. It's a bit psychedelic and that.
Bit Sergeant Pepperish, isn't it?
Yeah.
By the time you get to this point, it's just pastiches of the Beatles. And I think Noel's continued with his bad covers all the way through his solo career as well. I mean, I think the cover for Council Skies is absolutely shocking. I ken what he's tried to do with it, but it just hasn't worked.
You know this? I actually thought when I saw it that it looked like an old style kind of microdot creation.
Microdot.
I did.
Aye.
Or does it look like somebody trying to look like microdot? Is that the problem?
It looks like a Xerox of somebody trying to be microdot.
Right. That's probably why you don't like it. 2 belters on it. Tell us what the belters are, Michael, because Kevin and I will be talking about that. Seemed as though they were just going through the motions. A lot of good memories, though. OASIS, yeah, we would love to welcome them back. I'm sure Colin Jordan, evening, looking forward to this. Wasn't one of my favourite albums. I'm with you on that, Colin, but I've revisited it and I'm looking upon it a little bit differently tonight. Now, Craig, fairly, welcome back to the show, Craig. Really looking forward to Don't Believe the Truth. Again, yeah, sitting here, I have got very good memories of that, Craig, that album and the tour. And it's going to be interesting to look back on it to see if I still like it. And I think there was a couple of songs, actually, that, again, were tossed away by Noel around about that time or between this album and that album that should have been on an LP that never were, Kev. And one of them was Lord Don't Slow Me Down, but not the one with Noel's vocals, the one with Liam's vocals.
Liam's vocals, aye.
Don't know why they didn't go for that. Another one was called Who Put the Weight of the World on Your Shoulders, which was on the Goal soundtrack. I don't think you've heard that yet. Have you heard that?
I know it was on the Goal soundtrack, and I've heard the title, but I've never.
Great tune. Great tune.
Heard it.
And it didn't make the album, it didn't make this album, and it didn't make the next one. So yes, looking forward to that. And finally, before we get stuck into it, actually a few great songs in it. There are, Scott. There absolutely are. So how does it open up, Kev? It opens up with a lead single. And the lead single at that time is The Hindu Times. Now, the riff, I know this is going to amuse you and frustrate you, and you'll be delighted with this. The riff was lifted from a Stereophonics song called Same Size Feet. And I know you're a huge Phonics fan, Kev. So when you hear this, it's obviously going to, get your juices flowing because you're such a Kelly Jones aficionado.
Right. Everybody says that. I hate the Stereophonics with an absolute passion. And I'm not having that. The Hindu Times is a fantastic song. It is an absolutely brilliant song. And when they released it as a single, I was like, yes, if the whole of the album's up to this standard, then we're on to a winner. The problem is, and I think you find the problem with this album in the first line Liam sings on this song. He sounds terrible. His voice sounds absolutely shot. Like, go back and listen to it. It's croaky. It's everything. And it's croaky. It's rough. It's no the smooth Liam even standing on the shoulders. It's like his voice sounds completely shot when he's doing the take of this or whatever take that they decided to use. Then when you go back and have a wee look at it, Noel says that it took 3 months for Liam to appear in the studio to actually the songs. So I think right away, you maybe get a feeling of there's a lot of good stuff on this album. And when I've heard The Hindu Times again, I still think it's a great song, but I didn't think it's a good Liam vocal.
Did I say that? Did I say that about the last album? It wasn't a great Liam album, was it, for his vocals? And I remember reading that actually in a magazine at the time. Was no bemoaning the fact that the songs were finished other than the vocals, and he had to get his act together, Liam. Yeah, there you go. I've got to say, that wasn't my criticism of it. I agree with you. I liked it. It was a good, I guess, comeback lead single.
The title doesn't make any sense to me either.
No, apparently Noel's seen it on a T-shirt somewhere. And he just ran with it. He liked it. And also, it was a number one, as the lead single generally was for Oasis by this stage. However, I've got to say, there is a moment in the video. I wasn't a big fan of the video. No real creativity. I mean, Oasis had some cracking videos. When they hit their height, they really did. They had brilliant video. Do you know what I mean? What a video that is. Unbelievable. Stand By Me. In fact, I reckon their best era for videos, Kev, is Be Here Now.
It is, because they're
wadded by that stage.
They're throwing money left, right, and centre, and like just let's hire helicopters, let's let off smoke bombs, let's stage car crashes,
let's drive Rolls Royces into swimming pools. Exactly. But this one, watch it back, right? There's a moment, Kevin, it's a wee bit cringy, right? And Noel and Liam Noel kind of shimmies up to him and does the whole status quo thing, and they both start singing into the same mic, and he's kind of looking over his shoulder when he does it, and I'm just thinking, OASIS, and it's pretty bad, mate. I can't get over it. Honestly, it's the worst part about this particular song is that wee bit in the video. And I wonder if anybody's still got their OASIS t-shirts. Remember they released them?
I wish I would have bought one at the time. I would still be wearing it today. I love
I
Status
remember.
Quo. I do. I hate the Stereophonics, but I love Status Quo.
I don't even know if you're being serious. There's 11 tracks on this. Sorry, mate.
I've only met Alan Thompson once before, and it was before a Status Quo concert. So there you go. I'll be talking to Tomo about that on Friday night. See if he remembers it.
So he was at a Quo concert.
He was doing some promotion in the SEC with the reigning Miss Scotland at the time.
What was her name?
We all, I can't remember. Anyway, we all walked up, and Miss Scotland folk were coming to see her, and we asked her to take the picture with us and Alan Thompson.
Superb. Tomo, Status Quo. You could get that to rhyme and get up on stage and do something. 11 tracks, 6 written by Noel, 3 by Liam, 1 by Gem, 1 by Andy Bell. There is also a bonus track. We'll get onto that as well. So a good start then, you reckon? A good start, Kev?
Oh, perfect start. Brilliant start. Great way to start a gig as well. Absolutely fantastic. Also, the 10 Years of Noise and Confusion tour, they done that at the Barrowlands, and I remember them doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'd done the Hindu Times and Hung in a Bad Place at the Barrowlands. And that's why, even though it was filmed for MTV, it was delayed 24 hours so they could cut the 2 songs. That was the reason it was delayed 24
hours. Was it 2 nights? Was it 2 nights at the Barrowlands?
No, one night. One night at the Barrowlands. Celtic beat Motherwell 3-1 at Fir Park. Louvel Moravchik scored an absolute peachy goal for a free kick. We were in Beards, me and my wife were in Beards next door watching it. Then we went into the Barrowlands, saw that gig, then watched it on MTV the following night, and they had cut out the Hindu Times, and I think it was Hung in a Bad Place.
Now, it was a PPV on the telly, wasn't it? On Sky.
Aye.
That gig. And it came out on the stage because there had been some kind of rumour around Patsy Kensit and Alan McCoist.
That's right, aye.
There had been, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And Liam came out and dedicated a song to Alan McCoist. You remember that?
He did, yeah.
I do recall that, yes. So good start. We've got Mark Tyler coming in. Welcome back to the show. Hope you're well. What Oasis period was a cover of Heroes? Now, that was a B-side on Do You Know What I Mean?
Aye.
So that was the Be Here Now period. It is actually, for me personally, it's my favourite cover that Oasis ever did. I think it's a brilliant cover of Heroes. Superb. Just Noel on the vocals.
Oh, yeah, that's excellent. A decent cover.
And Michael McDonald, I don't think it was a B-side, but there's a tune called I'd Pick You Every Time that's top. It was actually a Noel Gallagher B-side. It was on the B-side of one of his very early solo singles. And you'd think he'd learned his lesson with Oasis with the amount of tracks that he threw away. He has continued to do it as a solo artist, Kev. Loads of tracks that on EPs and on B-sides, etc., that should definitely have been on an album. Now, the next one for me is I felt, Kev, that this album, when I listened all the way through it, again, as I did today, I think it showed Oasis' strength. Rock and roll star dedicated to McCoist. There you go. I reckon this album shows that Oasis' strength by this stage. Right, if you think it definitely maybe, right, you've got the rock songs and you've got the ballads. Mm-hmm. You go into Morning Glory, there's rock, there's ballads. There's a wee bit of psychedelia in there as well. See, by this stage, I think they can still do the ballad. I don't think they can do the rock. I really don't. Now, I know the opening track would probably fall into the rock category. Absolutely get that, right? But this second song, Force of Nature, it just plods along. Absolute junk for me. First time I ever heard it was actually on the soundtrack of a movie. Can you remember the movie Love, Honour and Obey? Johnny Lee Miller, Jude Law, Denise Van Outen. Remember it?
It's one of the most terrible films I've
I loved it. I went to the pictures to see that.
Wow. This is a confession time tonight. Eh?
Well, listen, you've got to admit to Status Quo, mate. I went to the flicks to see that. And I have since watched it in full a number of times. Somebody has uploaded it onto YouTube. I love it. I think you should revisit that movie.
Right, I'll revisit it.
You need to. You need to. But that was on the soundtrack, which strangely enough, the film came out before the album. So you heard that song before you heard it on the album, and it's a slightly different version. But I'm sorry, it doesn't do it for me, and it makes me wonder whether the days of Oasis writing a proper rock and roll song at this stage, I thought, nah, those days are behind them. And I'm thinking the vocal is one of the biggest reasons for it. I love Noel Gallagher's voice. I think he's got a brilliant voice, right? And sometimes that doesn't really get spoken about, Kev. You know, you across Oasis's career, I think there's been moments from Noel that have been superb on this song. Not up there, not one of his finest moments, unfortunately.
No, as you say, it's a stodgy plod through mud. It seems to start a wee trend with the later albums after this one. You had a cracking opener, then you had a stodgy Noel setting song. Noel would always sing the setting song as we get to this point. And as you say, it just sounds so bad, throw away, just... Aye, it's no good. There's
no real redeeming kind of qualities, is there?
Something about stash and cash and
I know,
smoking all my stash and like I think he was leaving Meg Matthews at this point, because there's some bitter lyrics on this album.
That would make sense. That would make sense.
Aim at some
character in his life, because She Is Love is definitely about his new.
Everybody's still there.
Oh, yeah, we're still here. You disappeared for a minute. You did for a second. Can you hear us though? You'll come back, hopefully. So one of the later songs on the album, Kev, was definitely about Sarah McDonald, who he has since split up for. Are you back, Kev? Can you hear us? Go out and come back in.
I'm back, I'm back.
Oh, yes, he's back in the room. He's back in the room. It was like that. Remember Derek Acora? Remember him? Whatever happened to him? The Scouser, spiritualist. He came to my work once. He did not, did he?
Did he die? I'm sure Derek Acora died.
Listen, see when we come up with something, right? Rather than
did he not go ghost hunting with the Happy Mondays? That was a programme, Ghost hunting with Sean Ryder and Bez.
He went ghost hunting with Sean and Bez. I need to watch this, mate. Right. If you promise me that you're going to watch Love on Honor Bay, I'll definitely watch that. Ghost hunting with Sean Bez and Derek Acora. Plunge McNugget. What's the Story, Morning Glory, and Stop the Clocks are the only Oasis albums you need. What about Definitely Maybe, mate? Definitely Maybe. Come on. And Patrick McLaughlin. Stay Young never gets mentioned. One of my faves. I love it. Kev doesn't. Kev thinks it's Oasis by numbers. I love it. And it would have made it onto that other mythical 1990s album that Oasis should have released that wasn't a collection of B-sides that would have sold 10 million, and they could have just chucked it after the first 4 albums, Kevin. We wouldn't be here tonight talking about Heathen Chemistry. So, yeah, I'm sorry, not one of my favourites. And as you can probably imagine, I'm dropping this song, Force of Nature, for one of the B-sides. So we'll come back to which ones we choose. I'm dropping this song all day long. What about you?
It's got a wee X beside it for me.
X marks the spot. Right.
A wee X as well.
I want to hear about so Force of Nature. If it was a Celtic signing this season, which signing would it be?
Adaguchi. Again, we signed him last year, but that's who it would be.
I was asking from the season we're talking about, like Headman or Fernandez.
Oh, Headman. All right.
Well, Laursen.
It would have to be Bagur, like it would have to be a bit of a donkey. It didn't make sense.
But he was one of the players, though, that was a standout outside the Celtic and Rangers in Scottish football. We went and bought him, and it didn't quite work. Same with Fernandez. We did that with Fernandez as well, and that became a bit risky because, how many of them were actually making an impact. So we're writing off Force of Nature, even though it appeared on a fantastic movie called Love, Honour and Obey. Anybody out there who has not watched that film, get it watched. There's a phenomenal scene involving a cucumber. Hung in a Bad Place is number 3 on this album. Kev, right, I want you to tell me your thoughts about this before I wade in.
Dreadful vocal by Liam again. It's all out of the shop, It's as if, as you say, they seem to have a trend here when they try to do fast ones, they try not to do the Oasis by numbers, and they just mess up. This completely mess up the concept of what the song's meant to be. And I think this is one of them as well. It's just like it's all over the shop. It's like what he's actually trying to do there. I didn't like it, and I could see why they played it live, but when I listened back to it today, I was like, nah, you're all right. I just can't. It doesn't hit the spot anymore. I probably loved it at the time, actually. I think it would be one of these songs that I loved at the time, and now when I hear it back, I'm like, that's just a bit like stale milk, that.
Well, I actually think that opening 3 tracks, right? Obviously, the lead track was a #1 single. We've spoken about it, but in terms of a collection of 3 songs, I'm looking at those 3 and thinking that is not a healthy start to the album. "Hung in a Bad Place" is a Game Archer song. Heavy Stereo lost Creation Records a lot more money than most bands did, and I can't name you a Heavy Stereo song that Game Archer wrote that would be in the forefront of my mind that thought, here's a guy not only who can just step in almost as a session musician, Kevin, fill a role, but give him songwriting duties. No, you don't do that. Liam Gallagher's vocal, I didn't mind it on this track. I'm going to be honest with you, but I think what it does, this is almost a prelude to BDI, Kev, right? So Game Archer's writing the song, and as you know, the songwriting partnership, a lot of it was Game on the guitar and Liam coming up with a melody. And I think if you listen back to it, it's almost BDI-esque. And I know that you like BDI, and we're going to cover the albums at some point in the future. So a bit of a bad start, I think, to the LP. And I think it needs something to save it at this point.
Again, you have a look at it, it's a Game Archer song. Heavy Stereo were rubbish. Lost Creation, an awful lot of money.
I was trying to be kind.
Lost Creation, an awful lot of money. Next thing you can, you're in the biggest band in Britain, and a songwriter's going like to go and write us a song. And this song just reeks of pressure of that. That's what it reeks of. It smells of pressure of trying to impress one of the greatest British songwriters in the last 50 years. And he lets you through it. Gets through his filter. He doesn't just turn it and go, that's rubbish.
So did Little James, though.
Aye, well, so I can't go back to that nightmare of Little James, please, no.
No, I think that the counselling is helping, but yes, that also got through Noel's filter. So his judgment maybe was not at its best at this moment in time. It needs a big song at this stage, Kev. I've said before, by this point, I don't think Oasis are writing the big rock hits the way that they used to. They're not powerful. As you say, they're just trying to sound powerful. They're Oasis by numbers. But what Noel can still do is he can write a ballad. And he comes up with one in Stop Crying Your Heart Out, which for me pretty much sums up Celtic's season.
Yes, it does. It was a strange season, eh? That is a really, really strange season. A difficult season to try to. I mean, I think it's a season that we can look back on fondly. But when we're 20 years this year for Seville, and I understand. I've never watched Seville back. I saw it in the stadium that night, and that's it. I've never went. I've got no want, will, or inclination to watch Seville back, the game in Seville back one little bit. I've watched us beating Stuttgart. I've watched us actually beating Liverpool, but I've never went back and watched the final. And I kind of agree with Martin O'Neill. We spoke to Martin O'Neill a couple of months ago, and he was saying, he says he looks on it that way. I was in Seville. I don't look back on it fondly, and as I've said back quite a few times, I want to get back to a European final, but I didn't want to lose another European final because it's absolutely horrible. I didn't want that. But you have a look at this. That season, we were done with Big Hartson's goal against Rangers in the League Cup final, which we were done. Hartson was a mile onside, and that goal got chopped off. Got put out the Scottish Cup by Inverness when we were put all our eggs in our basket. Gone to Anfield, was it? I think it was going to Anfield at that point. And we ended up with nothing, eh? We absolutely ended up with nothing. Then you've got Rugby Park on the last day. There was no way that we were ever going to outscore them, but we had the chances. the man that we're going to speak to on Friday night had a chance.
Oh, he did. He did.
So it's a season which is one of the best seasons I've ever had being a Celtic fan for soul opening moments, but it's also one of the hardest. Definitely
Absolutely.
one of the hardest.
It cannot be airbrushed because we reached the European final, just the third in the history of the club, and we've never done it since. And people go on about, maybe missed chances in that final game against Kilmarnock, but we're talking one goal, Kev, and I always go back to that game against Dundee, where we've hammered them 6-2, but we let in a last-minute goal, remember? Can you remember who scored it for Dundee?
Barry Smith.
Lee Mayer.
Lee Mayer?
He scored a last-minute goal for Dundee to make it 6-2. So there's wee moments all throughout that season that you could say we shouldn't have lost a point there. We shouldn't have lost a goal there, and that was hugely disappointing. That the end of that season where you finish on the same points and you lose the title on goal difference. How on earth can you pick your team up from that? Unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at Stop Crying Your Heart Out, as I say, it's a song that kind of sums up Celtic's season. Scott Howe believes that it's the last great song Oasis ever wrote. It's one of them.
It is one of them. It stands up with anything that they've ever done. It does really stand up. There is a Celtic connection, I think. I'm sure the Celtic fans sung it somewhere, and I can't remember where.
Somebody in the comments maybe will help us.
It'll come back to me. As soon as when I first heard that one, Jesus, that is unbelievable. And even now, it still stands up. The fact that an X Factor winner took it as well and done a cover version of it, like this shows you.
Was that who was that? Leona Lewis.
Leona Lewis, aye. She done a cover version of it, which still gets played every so often if you listen to any of the cheesy radio stations. They play that version of Stop Crying Your Heart Out quite a bit. Oh, it's a song, It's an absolutely fantastic song.
Can't deny it. You just can't deny it. And
but it sounds different to the other ballads because it's more piano led.
And another thing I love about it, Kev, right? We spoke about our love for Acquiesce, and which is almost like Liam and Noel. I loathe to call it a duet. Here we go. The whole Celtic end, Stuttgart away. Were you at that game, Kev?
No, I wasn't. I watched it in the Newmarket and in Bannockburn, but I remember guys out there telling me that we were singing Oasis songs again.
Are you still banned for that pub after that night?
That pub shut down on the 1st of May 2005.
How on earth can you remember that date? So, the vocal duet, the dueling between Noel and Liam, which we love so much on Acquiesce, you get a bit of that on this song as well, but it's a different type of song. Video is spectacular. It's had that crossover appeal, like you say, to such a degree that reality TV X Factor winner can sing it and make a hit of it again. I'm sure it paid for a swimming pool or something for Noel. But it's at this stage that the LP picks up for me, Kev, and there's a middle section of the album that starts with this song that I think makes this a much better album than I actually thought it was, now that I'm revisiting it. Now, the next track, right? I'd written off Liam Gallagher's writing career at this stage on account of Little James. Remember the song that he could have used as a nursery rhyme?
Yes.
And I'm interested because sometimes I love a song and you don't. And I think Songbird, right? I'm going to say I think it's a phenomenal tune, but I actually think it could have been better. Have you heard the demo?
Yes.
Right. I think that it should run the way it runs, but you could probably get another minute if you introduced the dynamic that the demo's got nearer the end of the song. That comes down to somebody like Noel, who knows all about songwriting and arrangements and stuff like that. But it is, for me, I do think it's a fabulous song. And did they not sing it that night at the bars that you're talking about? Was Liam not wearing a Lacoste woolen jersey? I'm sure they sang it that night.
No, I don't think he done Songbird that night. No,
because they done it for a spell, didn't they? They did play it live for a bit.
I think the version on the album's rubbish.
Do you prefer the demo?
I prefer the demo. It's crying your heart out, and I don't think that helps it. I don't think that helps it. I don't think that helps it at all. You listen to Stop Crying Your Heart Out, the next thing you get this wee sort of a step up for a nursery rhyme. Like, aye, it's better than Little James. I mean, me passing wind doing a toilet tube's better than Little James, eh? But that, no, it's if you're talking about Oasis standard, you're talking about After Stop Crying Your Heart Out. It's a B-side at best.
Oh,
Other
I
bands would
disagree.
have other bands would have this as a B-side, and again, it's probably them. It's probably one of them. It is one of these songs that I probably did like. I liked at the time, but as the years have went on, I've went, aye, whatever.
I'd like to. It's not as good as whatever.
Oh no, never.
It'd be good if they reworked it. I'm going to ask you a question, right? Because I've been saying for long enough that there's certain Noel Gallagher songs that, if there was a Liam vocal on it, or if they were a wee bit quicker with a Liam vocal, they'd be perfect Oasis songs. I'm guessing you've heard the AI Oasis tunes, yeah?
Aye.
You heard that? I do like the idea of going back sometimes and fixing things. Now, Bobby Gillespie, obviously, whose front cover is over your shoulder there, he spoke about if something comes out and it's not right, it's right. Don't go back, change it.
Oh.
Whereas I look at a song like this and I think there's so many elements of that song that could have made it a great Oasis song, right? And I do still like it. And it was a single and it got to number 3. And I disagree with you. I do like it. I don't think it's just a notch up for a nursery rhyme. But it could have been better. It could have been better if certain elements of that demo were maybe not just taped onto the end, but part of the song. I think it could have been a much, much better song. Let us know what you think in the comments. Songbird, yes or no? I'm saying yes. Kev's saying no. Patrick McLaughlin is talking about Ocean Colour Scene. Did you go to the Stirling Castle gig, Kev?
I watched it from a place called the Gowney Hill, which is across for the castle, and you can look in. So I watched it for nothing.
Did you have a carry out?
No comment.
I
think I did. I think I did.
But see, at this time, right, Ocean Colour Scene, I don't know. I mean, of that era, Patrick, I think though that clutchy 3 or 4 albums have aged really well. But I know that they've constantly released albums since then. They're still active. And for me, my interest in them waned. I mean, I don't buy an Ocean Colour Scene album now if it was to come out. I think my interest in the band probably lasted 3 or 4 albums, right? But a lot of bands, that's the case. But they've aged really well. But another kind of feature of bands around about this time, and Ocean Colour Scene were one of the bands. Brilliant B-sides, Kev. So Ocean Colour Scene had great B-sides. Cast, superb B-sides. The Verve, unbelievable B-sides. Pulp, The Charlatans. And all these songs, obviously, people say they were thrown away on the single. They were on the single because singles were selling big numbers back then. So obviously it was to try and push that. And often an album would come out and 2 singles would come out after the album's out. So they're asking you to buy the song twice. So they would chuck a few B-sides on there.
They would need you to purchase it, eh? So when we say thrown away, they're not really thrown away as a B-side. They are part of a package that you're basically getting, eh? But at the same point, at one point, they've recorded that in the studio and went like that. No, that's not good enough to put on the album. Which I've never worked out with some of them as well, eh?
Well, there's a few examples here. Right, so we're disagreeing about Songbird, Kev. What about Little by Little? Double A side, the only double A side that Oasis ever released. Obviously, the other A side on it was She Is Love, which, before you disappeared for a minute, I was explaining was a song written by Noel Gallagher for Sarah McDonald. And he was so embarrassed because they were at that early part of their relationship that he couldn't play it to her. So he had to turn around and look at the wall and play it there. So Little by Little, what do I remember about this song? Begbie was in the video. Bobby Carlyle was in the video, wasn't he?
Growing into like Clifford the Big Red Dog, getting bigger and bigger.
I hate that film.
It's not the best, is it? Again, I love this. And I thought this was going to be one when I heard that again, I'd be like, no, I'm not 100% sure. I've listened to it twice. It's fantastic. It's a brilliant song. One of Noel's best.
So you like it better now than you did at the time?
Yes.
Single, number 2 in the charts. Superb front cover as well, if you want to check that out. And again, I actually do think that Stop Crying Your Heart Out, Songbird, Little by Little, it's a section of the album for me, Kev, that saves the album as a work of art. I just think, yeah, they're all in the same vein in terms of the style and the fact that Noel wrote the three of them. But no, he didn't, because Liam wrote Songbird, saved his writing career. But for me, Little by Little's part of that, and it's a really, really strong bit. And I can only guess that the only reason they've put on a quick peep, which follows it, is to try and separate that wee section for the album from the end section, which sounds quite dramatically different from that wee section, that wee clutchy songs in the middle.
Aye, it makes no sense. A quick peep. It makes no. It's almost as if Liam's forgot to do the vocals.
Is this one of the songs that maybe
Aye,
were
it's
requiring
almost as
vocals?
if he just that was requiring vocals and he didn't actually do it. And Noel maybe didn't want to sing another one, and he's maybe went, no, I won't sing another one. Oh, it's a good wee jaunty instrumental. We'll just put it in like that, But it's waste of space.
It is. For me, it's a waste of a track. It's getting dropped, absolutely getting dropped from the album. And when I hear it, the only reason I think it could be included in there is to separate that clutchy songs, which are all in the kind of same vibe, from the end of the album, which is a wee bit different. It goes in a different direction. And they maybe want it as an interlude. I can understand Fucking in the Bushes being an intro on Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. I've never really liked the two jams on Morning Glory. I thought they were pointless. And I think this is pointless as well. A quick peep. It was written by Andy Bell. You think to yourself, in all the time it's taken for you to leave your last band and join Oasis, is this the best you can do, mate? It's no good, is it? It's no good.
Nah.
It's getting dropped. I don't mind telling you that. Right. Then it goes into a completely different vibe for the last few tracks, Kev, right? And the next one is, again, for me, I think it's the most underrated song on the album. Now, you and I had a complete disagreement on Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, where I loved Who Feels Love and you didn't. I think there's certain elements of that song in this song. It's written by Noel. You never hear it. I'm not sure if it ever got played live. And I'm listening to it today thinking to myself, I love this tune. This is tremendous. This is the one for me. This is probably doing for me what Little by Little done for you, revisiting the album.
Probably, but I'm quite glad you brought up Who Feels Love, because that was the vibe I got, and that's how it's got a big X next to it. As soon as I heard it, I'm ditching that. I'm ditching all in my mind. I'm actually struggling now. But when you were building it up there, giving it a stage to put it on, I'm going, did I listen to the right song? Because even in my head, I still can't even remember how this goes.
I could sing it to you, but I'm not gonna.
But when you mentioned Who Feel Love, it's just hippie, trippy, Beatles. It goes a bit psychedelic for here on in. They try to slow it down, and something that they didn't really smash until the last album.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. I think there was a wee element of that, and Champion Supernova was a good example of it. I think they failed when they tried to do it from that moment. I might disagree with some of your songs near the end of this album, but probably all in the mind. Kev, you and I are disagreeing. What does the viewers think? Would you keep this on your album? Are you dropping it for a B-side? We'll find out what Kevin's going to drop it for near the end of the show. Colin Jordan, Ballaway was a disaster. Headman was a quality goalkeeper at Coventry. Just didn't do it for us. Absolutely. He was on big, big wages. And there was a few games, I'm sure, the following season, Bayern Munich.
Bayern Munich. I was in Munich that night.
I think that that was my kind of like memory of Magnus Headman and his Celtic tenure. Patrick McLaughlin was 17 and just starting to go out partying big style when that was out. Kev, where were you? I was running my own business, married. So if you imagine that, right, when you think about Definitely Maybe, I'm a paper boy at school.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so, Oasis kind of follows you through your life at different parts of your life. You're an Oasis fan throughout that entire period. You're going to the gigs, you're seeing them live, you're going to see various tours. But that's where I was. Where were you, 2002?
2002, I started in the civil service in 2000. So I was there, and me and the missus had bought our first house about a year before that. So we were in the process of just trying to get it done up and that, and still going to watch Celtic. Like, we went 3 months once they put Heathen because we wanted to go to that game in Munich and Anderlecht away the following season. Our Heathen was packing in, and we had a choice to make. Do we go and watch 2 Celtic away games in the Champions League, or do we get the Heathen sorted? Went and watch Celtic,
Brilliant.
as you would.
Wouldn't
do that now, right enough, But
Kev, you do sometimes wonder, and you'll know people, and I'll know folk, and there'll be people in the comment section who know individuals whose lives have been shaped by going to watch Celtic, but not always in a good way. And I'm talking jobs, relationships, marriages, all falling by the wayside. But yes, it's all right if you and the missus are on the same page. Rob Lilly, loving the Britpop chat, but Radiohead are so much better. It's all about opinions, folks. Enjoying High Flying Birds. Does Liam still have BDI going? Right. I think we probably should do Radiohead. I think we probably should run through their discography. That would be very interesting, Rob. Big fan. JP probably has influenced that because they were a band who my brother was into, and I wasn't that first. I knew I loved the Benz album, but I've started getting into some of their other work as well. High Flying Birds. Yes, I'm enjoying it as well. Does Liam still have BDI? No, they were a 2-album band, and we're going to cover those albums because Kevin Graham loves them. Scott Howe, Idler's Dream, what a B-side. Does it make it onto the album, Scott? What does it replace? We will find out. And you come back in to say also that starting to love most of this album, how quickly I've changed my mind. Super. So it's probably all in the mind, Scott. Probably all in the mind. So, yes, we've moved on to probably all in the mind, which I love and Kevin doesn't, but that's why this works. And then you've got the other A side of the single, which is She Is Love. And again, I think that probably suits the wee middle section a wee bit better, but he's maybe just want to chop it a bit. I don't think it suits the last section, that psychedelic section of the album, Kev, but I do like it. Or do you just think it's one of the throwaway, no acoustic love songs?
It's one of the throwaway acoustic love songs. Then when I actually heard the B-sides, I'm going, what is that doing even anywhere near the album? Never mind being a double A-side single.
And by the way, the B-side to the double A-side was My Generation.
It was,
because it was one of the dual release things where you had CD1, CD2, and then they really were ripping it. And obviously, often what you would find is a remix, a demo, a live version, or indeed a cover. So we got My Generation. I just thought that was very, very predictable. You've got I Am the Walrus. You've got My Generation, Street Fighting Man, Heroes. I'm thinking you're just plucking from all the big guns. No, why not do something a wee bit more kind of psychedelic or kind of left field?
He done Hey Hey My My with Neil Young.
He did. Why didn't he cover something like Worldy Twist? Or the Laz, or something like that, or the Roses. That'd have been more interesting. But anyway, so we're on to She Is Love, and you don't like it. Is it getting dropped?
It's getting dropped with me, It's getting dropped. For me, the two, there's 3 really, really weak songs on this album. Well, there's more than that. Force of Nature, Hung in a Bad Place, Quick Peep, All in the Mind, and She Is Love. I mean, I think you thought this bit of the album kind of saved it. I'm going, no, not at all. It absolutely throws it off a cliff.
What, the middle bit or the end bit?
The like for a quick peep to She Is Love.
No, I like the middle bit. I like the middle bit.
Like stop crying your heart out.
Songbird, little bit. I would have thrown She Is Love into that mix as well. I think these songs all kind of like they were of the same kind of vibe, and then this final section's a bit psychedelic. So I think that makes the album a wee bit more interesting. The first section, the first 3 songs, I don't think they stand up. So we then go into Born on a Different Cloud. This is the bit where it's a wee bit more psychedelic, Kev, and it's Liam trying to be John Lennon. Never ever liked it at the time, never ever liked it since, but I like it now.
I like it. I liked it at the time and I like it now. And I need to say that because it's one of the poems, the title of one of my poems in my book. Born on a Different Cloud to describe Henrik Larsson. Still available, by the way, everybody. Great Christmas presents.
Yeah, you can't have much left, actually.
I haven't got much left. No, I like this. I like this wee turn of events that they try to do, and I think Liam does John Lennon very well.
He does.
He does do John Lennon very well, especially in the slower, the mid-tempo numbers. So I like Born on a Different Cloud. I really do. It's psychedelic by numbers, but it's different from, apart from like the end of like
Standing on the Shoulders of Giants.
but
kind of withered away, tailed off.
This gets into a sort of murkier, dirtier psychedelic, like a sort of, I was going to say grungier psychedelic, but it's more guitar based rather than like harpsichords and organs and all of that. This keeps the rock element in it, and it suits Liam.
I like it.
Really does. It really
aged
does suit
well.
Liam.
It's aged well, Kev. Interestingly enough, you mentioned Henrik Larsson. You are the only person on the planet ever to write a book of poetry about Henrik, which is available on axom.net. But you look at this season, 51 appearances for Henrik Larsson, 44 goals, and he wins nothing, Kev. He wins nothing. And the disappointment of that interview with Henrik after he's not even in the stadium, is he? And he can't look at the medal. Remember, this isn't what I came for. You remember that? Obviously, you do want to watch it back. But Born on a Different Cloud, if there was a song in this album that you would use the title to describe Henrik Larsson, this is the song. Better Man, the third of Liam's contributions to the album, right? And for me, it's the one that doesn't hit the spot, Kev. Interested to hear your thoughts. I think that this is another one of the ones where they think, right, we're Oasis, we're a rock band, let's write a rock song. And there's no melody, there's no chorus. It's like a bad BDI song. And you will admit, surely, that there's some bad BDI songs. I think this sounds like a BDI song, and it doesn't do it for me. And it's one of the songs, one of 4 songs that I'm dropping from the album.
No, I wouldn't drop Better Man. I like it. I think it's got a loose, funky jamness about it. Kind of Primal Scream era. Give out but don't give out up, like the sort of loose, no rocks, because that's but it's like it's got a sort of like funkiness about it that I don't think Oasis had. It's got a great riff. I think it actually just chugs along, man, quite nicely. I think it's a great way to end the album. I wish it could have lasted for another 4 or 5 minutes.
It lasted for another 33, because there's a bonus track.
It is a bonus track, I forgot all about that. But I do like it. I think it's got a bit of looseness about it, and I think it's a good end to the album.
This is a good point. Going from the Barras to Wembley Stadium will alter any artist's direction, be it writing, sound, image, personnel. Totally. Absolutely. Because you've got to then play to your audience, and you've got a record company behind you, albeit they were releasing records on Big Brother. You've got execs, you've got all this kind of backroom team that are advising you, Kev, and you are writing, I guess, to the gallery. We disagree on a lot of these songs. Better Man for me gets dropped, but 33 minutes later there's a song called The Cage. It's a Noel Gallagher song, and it's just pointless bonus track. I mean, is there a great bonus track somewhere? Tell me, is there? Remember the one on Second Coming, The Foz?
The Foz,
track 99. So I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there's not a great Nirvana bonus track, but this certainly is not one, and I'm going to use it as track number 12 so I can drop it and replace it with one of the B-sides, Kev. But before we get to the B-sides, we're on the Screamacelica jukebox. You've got a quiz, you've got 3 tracks. Pick your 3 tracks.
I think that's why I love Better Man, because it reminds me of Love Spreads. It's got that sort of wee vibe about it.
What is the vibe? Bit dirty.
70s Zeppelin, just a bit. A bit like badness, evil, loose, funky, flares, long hair, long curly hair.
Okay.
That's how I like it.
Right, you've got a quid. You can pick 3 songs. Tell me, what are the 3 songs you're going to choose?
Easy. Hindu Times, Stop Crying Your Heart Out, and Little by Little. Okay,
what ones did I choose, Kev? Did I choose any of the 3 that you chose, do you think? I'm going to go for...
I think that'll be the easiest 3 choices that I'll cover, probably.
Right, listen to this. I'm going to go for Probably All in the Mind, Songbird, and Stop Crying Your Heart Out. So we agreed on one, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad. Okay, B-sides,
It'd be
high quality.
as well gain your pound to me.
No, listen, your pound would empty a pub, mate. Your pound would empty a pub.
Easier to get to the bar then.
You didn't drink anyway. So we've got the B-sides.
That's kind of changed, but
Last I heard, you were on non-alcoholic beer. Is there going to be a revelation on tonight's Screamacelica, Kev?
no. When I was on holiday, I had a couple of alcoholic drinks. Yes, because it's a state of mind.
How did it feel?
It was a state of mind. Felt fine, mate. Felt fine.
Right. No, it's an interesting one because I didn't realise that, and obviously you had not touched alcohol for a number of years.
9.
But 9 years, and however, you're a different beast now than you were 9 years ago.
Yes, definitely, aye.
And that's why you can drink differently. See the issue I've got in this country is your introduction to alcohol. A lot of the time isn't a good one, is it? It's people doing it on the fly, people doing it on the street corners, people doing it in wooded areas and drinking 2.5 litre bottles of cheap cider just to get a buzz.
At 2:30 for a 3 o'clock kickoff.
Do you get that? Do you get that in Milan? Is that how kids are introduced to alcohol in Milan?
No.
You have a wee glass of wine with your dinner and stuff like that. No, that's interesting.
I've got a completely, utterly different state of mind than what I had 9 years ago.
Yeah, good.
So I was
in a good way.
Aye, and I'm more confident in myself that I'm able to handle it. So there you go.
Good man. I mean, I obviously fell off the meat wagon, not that kind of meat wagon, after 2 years as a vegetarian. Aye. So I'm now indulging. Sorry for anybody that might upset, but I'm now indulging in meat. We're full of confessions this evening, Kev.
I know.
Dear me.
Where's the priest?
Meat eating, alcohol drinking, AXOM contributors. Right, we're going to get onto the B-sides. I think that this particular album, there's so much quality on the B-sides, Kev. And I think when I listen back to it, because I'm checking out a wee bit by the time this album is released, because I felt that it was 2 bad albums in a row for Oasis, as a huge Oasis fan at the time, who, the soundtrack of their youth was Oasis, probably my favourite band, really, at that time, that part of my life. And I was checking out a wee bit, getting into other things. And the follow-up to this, Don't Believe the Truth, got me right back into them, because I think that's a quality album, that's to come. And I probably, a wee bit like yourself, hadn't invested in much time in all the B-sides. So listening back to them today and yesterday and over the last few days, was a bit of a revelation for me. And I think that there's loads of brilliant ones on there, but the 4 that I'm going to go for to replace 4 songs that I'm going to drop. Let me just tell you what I'm dropping first, because I mentioned it as we went through. So I'm going to get rid of Better Man. I'm going to get rid of The Cage. I'm also replacing A Quick Peep, which is a nonsense, and Force of Nature. I'm getting rid of those 4, and I'm replacing them with Idler's Dream, Thank You for the Good Times, which is unbelievably good, Shout It Out Loud, and You've Got the Heart of a Star, which was on the B-side of Songbird. And if you take these 4 songs and you replace the 4 that I've mentioned, I think you've got a fantastic album, a fantastic Oasis album.
You have got a better album. The ones that I'm taking out are Force of Nature, Hung in a Bad Place, Songbird, Quick Peep, all in my mind. She Is Love and The Cage, and I'm replacing them with 4 songs. Just Getting Older, Idler's Dream, Thank You for the Good Times, which sounds a bit like Ocean Colour Scene, actually. When you actually listen to it, it's got that sort of wee Traveller's tune, sort of wee bounce. And Shout It Out Loud. That's the 4 I'm putting on.
Brilliant B-sides.
Idler's Dream, I didn't understand why it wasn't on the album. Again, it's piano and it's just no singing, but again, it's just like, how are you not sitting there going, that should be on that?
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to set up Spotify playlists our alternative Oasis albums, Kev, and obviously people can decide which is the best, and it's all about opinions. But when I'm looking at these B-sides, I'm thinking I would love, if Noel Gallagher decided I'm going to get a stool and an acoustic guitar, and I'm going to go and play playhouses all over Britain, I'm just going to play acoustic songs, and I'm going to play B-sides that I've never played and all that, and he started playing songs like that, I would pay to see it, man. I think that would be brilliant. Just pure
definitely.
Noel Gallagher songwriting.
Aye,
Fantastic.
definitely. I think that's maybe what he should be doing, eh? That's maybe what he should actually be doing. That's his hang. When you look at the couple of hangs that he's released for his current solo album, that Dead to the World is fantastic. Then you look at the previous album, Dead in the Water, you're going, Jesus Christ, no, you can throw them away like all day. And you've been doing it for years and years, and Idler's Dream's up there with that. And you go, why did you? I don't know. I really don't know what goes through his head sometimes.
He's a talented boy. He might not throw the songs away as readily now that he's a single man going through a divorce. B-sides, I've got to mention this as well. Just getting older, Kev, you've put out an album, and it's leading me into a conversation that we had on the Be Here Now show, right? You know what it reminds me of? You know what song on Be Here Now that I don't like, that this reminds me of, that you and I were talking about during the week?
Magic Pie.
Yes. It reminds me of Magic Pie. And the reason I bring it up, I still don't like the Be Here Now version of Magic Pie, and I've not liked it for 26 years or however long it's been out. But somebody tweeted a version of Magic Pie live on the Be Here Now tour, right? And it is unbelievable. It is superb.
It is.
Now, this is an album that Noel said didn't stand up live, Be Here Now. He said it didn't stand up. I'm listening to that Magic Pie version, and it's superb. I love it.
They did. I went to see them at the SEC, but I only got 10 songs because somebody hit Bonehead with a quarter bottle of vodka and they walked off. So I didn't get the full Be Here Now bit. But at that time, that band were very, very decent. They were a decent live band. And when you hear that version of Magic Pie, it's superb. That version of Magic Pie is brilliant. And also the light show. And this is what brought it back to me. When I was watching the light show, any Pink Floyd heads in the comments or listening to it afterwards, Pink Floyd released a video called The Division Bell. And basically Oasis have stole the Division Bell lighting show. With the big circle and like a world and the moon. And when I was watching Magic Pie, I'm going, I remember seeing that light show. I can't really remember the song, but the light show came back to me. I was like, all right. I went, I did see them doing that. But Alan McGee says it's a cracking song, so we've got to.
You and McGee disagreed with me that night. You ganged up on me. Right, there's a few things I want to bring up before we go, Kev. Have you got time to talk about other albums in 2002? Just a wee
yes.
That you liked. JJI, Idler's Dream is epic. Makes me greet every time. I'm going to listen to that on the way home. Not you greeting, Idler's Dream. Scott Howe, Idler's Dream, classic. I'm going to listen to it on the way home because it will take me about an hour. And Chris Jardine, best album of 2002 was The Coral. So let's finish on that, right? So the best album of 2002, Coldplay, A Rush of Blood to the Head. That came out when I was in, where was I? I was in the West Indies somewhere. I forget. But I remember that coming out. Obviously, people don't like Coldplay. You had bands like the Vines, Highly Evolved. Remember, they were a thing at the time. Doves with The Last Broadcast, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, BRMC, The Coral with The Coral. Loved that. I loved everything The Coral's ever done. And The Streets, original Pirate Material. Kev, I know you're a big fan of Mike Skinner. That was a superb album. You had Interpol, Turn on the Bright Lights, The Flaming Lips, Yoshimi Battles, The Pink Robots, The Libertines Up the Bracket. Did you get into the polyphonic spree, by the way?
No. At this point with music, I'd kind of tuned out. But I know for a fact that the albums that you've run down there that I listened to, there's actually 3: the Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, Doves, and The Streets. I would have listened to those albums far more than this Oasis album that year.
I can see why.
And the Doves album I think that sums up the Run to Seville for me. I think that was a soundtrack. of that point, that Doves album.
Oh, I love that album. I love the Doves. I love Doves. The band. We also had the music. By the music, I remember seeing them in the venue in Edinburgh. I think it was about $7.50 a ticket. Beck, Sea Change, Boards of Canada with Gio Gaddy. The soundtrack of our lives behind the music. I only ever heard of them because Noel Gallagher was banging on about them. The Hives, your new favourite band. Remember that? Remember that? That was another Alan McGee.
Hate to say I told you so.
Yeah, that's the one. Foo Fighters. Don't know if you're a Foo Fighters fan. One by one, Kev. What I found interesting when we were talking to McGee is that he got the opportunity to sign the Foo Fighters and he knocked
knocked it back.
He knocked them back. Idlewild. I went through a stage where Idlewild loved about 3 or 4 of their albums. The Remote Part was one of them. Fantastic. Evil Heat by Primal Scream. Where do you hold that in your Primal Scream discography?
It's got swastika eyes on it, ain't it? So it's got to be very, very high up. Again, it's an album after a classic album. I mean, it's the one after Exterminator, and it was always going to be difficult to follow up Exterminator. And at this point in 2002, they're still the best live band on the planet at this point, with Shields and Manny, and they're just a complete and utter noise, a complete and utter force. I didn't like that album as much as I like Exterminator, but I liked what they done with it live.
And I love the art. I love the visuals. Love the visuals, Kev.
They were a really, really electronic punk, in-your-face live band at that point. And I did ask Andrew Innes that night we watched them when Celtic beat Lazio 2-1. We've never mentioned that at all on this programme. And I mentioned that to him, and he says it's the best live band that he's ever played with.
He did. Such a humble guy as well. The other album I'm going to mention just now is Death in Vegas, Scorpio Rising. The reason I mention it, I got into Death in Vegas, the Contino sessions it was, and I know that they had released music before then, and I'd done the usual backtracking, buying a discography. By Scorpio Rising, I was still into them. But the reason I mention it is obviously Liam was very friendly with Richard Fearless, and they collaborated on the lead single to that album, which I think's brilliant, by the way. But that then resulted in what we're talking about, pushing the envelope. Oasis weren't really pushing the envelope at this stage, but I was really excited to read, I think in the NME it would have been at the time, that Fearless was going to be producing the next Oasis album, which became Don't Believe the Truth. It never ever happened. Now, I don't know if it's a different set of songs, Kev, or if it's the same set of songs but produced differently that became Don't Believe the Truth. But I'd love to hear the sessions. I really would love to hear the Death in Vegas sessions.
Aye.
It didn't work out. No, I don't think rated it. He said it wasn't strong enough. He done the same with the Amorphous Androgynous later on. So there's a few Oasis albums, no Gallagher albums kicking around that we've never heard. And I think that the Death in Vegas one was an opportunity for Oasis to take that diversion.
It probably was an opportunity to take that diversion, but obviously, as I say, they're a brand by this point. So there's maybe that in the back of your mind. It's interesting, I read an interview or a news item with Noel Gallagher this afternoon when he's saying that the reunion's not going to happen, but for the 30th anniversary, I definitely maybe. They've suddenly found some hidden tapes that they thought they had lost of those sessions, and they will be coming out for the 30th anniversary.
Different versions of the same songs?
Yes.
Oh, come on, man. Honestly. It's like we're getting to the stage where it's like an anthology and you can hear John and Ringo having a cup of tea in the background. I mean, come on, give us what we want to hear.
I know it's like a bit like, the tapes were mislabeled. No, you've just had them sitting there and they've been rubbish and you thought they've been rubbish for years, but no, a bit like the Nebworth. Nebworth has been built up to be one of the biggest gigs ever, but they never released it at the time. And the reason they never released it at the time, because straight after it, everybody says it was rotten. Even Noel says it was rotten. Liam says it was rotten. Alan McGee went, it was absolutely terrible. The sound was everywhere. I reckon that Nebworth album's been overdubbed. I reckon Noel's went back in and fiddled a bit with it.
Right, and you've got your conspiracy about King Tut's Kid. Keep them coming.
Because they filmed Main Road, Loch Lomond, and Nebworth. So out of they three, you would have released Nebworth, the biggest gig in this universe ever, and they didn't. They released Main Road. Why did they release Main Road? Because it was a better gig.
I'm guessing that would have been the reason. Definitely. And the thing is as well, these bands, these brands, because you quite rightly said they became a brand, they've got a massive archive, Kev. They've got huge archives of live material, demos, different takes, stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor, all that stuff. Bands like Oasis have got that. And yeah, anything that they bring out, I'll check it out because I'm a fan. But there's a few things I wish they would do. And, you know, revisiting certain things over the last few weeks has shown me that some of the albums could have been a lot better. We will be covering Don't Believe the Truth next, Kev. We'll announce when that's going to happen. Final question, where do you place this album in the discography of Oasis?
How many albums did they have? 8?
7.
7.
If you want to include Master Plan, you could say 8.
Right, I'm including the Master Plan.
Okay.
This is 7.
Above
Giants.
Standing on the shore. Oh, there you go.
Giants is conference, man. That's been relegated. The foot touching the sides.
Excellent. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We are Oasis fans. I don't know if you're getting that or if you just think that we're here to criticise them. We're not here to criticise them, but obviously we're big fans. They're a band that spent a lot to Kevin and I. I'm back on the meat. Kevin's back on the drink. This has been Screamacelica. Join us again hopefully next week. And thanks everybody for getting involved in a Celtic state of mind.
See you